Rosmeris, the President of IRAS, Excellencies, senior government officials, members of the diplomatic corps, members of the press, academic, ladies and gentlemen. I have an honor to address this gathering today to present, as Rosemary has said, some remarks about this issue who is of great importance today, called the impact of the war between the United States, Israel, and Iran on the global energy supply, the case of Cuba. Since February 28, the world has watched in horror as one of the greatest threats to energy security in history unfolds. The joint airstrikes by the United States and Israel against Iran has fractured the fragile stability of the international system. This is not just another regional conflict. It is a geopolitical earthquake whose shockwaves have sent fuel prices soaring to unprecedented levels. The partial closure of the Strait of Hormuz, through which 1/5 of the world's oil and gas supply passes, has created a deficit that no government has been able to mitigate. With the price of barrel of oil and natural gas rising by almost 50%, the inflationary spiral is no longer a fear, but a reality in homes around the globe. In some countries in Asia, excluding China, as my colleague said, a state of emergency, reducing work hours and closing schools have declared. Europe prepares for fierce competition for resources, while the Trump administration maintains a tense and fragile truce until April 6. Amid this chaos, the assassination of the Iranian supreme leader during purported negotiations reveals the treacherous nature of this aggression. This war has become of disinformation, also unfolding in the technological and digital spheres, where contradictory versions of military and political events circulate with two predominant narratives: the one disseminated by Western media and governments allied with Israel, and the one disseminated by communication channels linked to Iran, which has offered a dignified resistance that refute the rumors and apocalyptic predictions, as the Iranian people understand that this war seeks to prevent the annihilation of their country. Therefore, they respond with all their resources, surprising and inspiring other nations. To understand this dark moment, I turn to the light of one of the most insightful thinkers of our time. On August 13, 2026, the same day in which we are going to celebrate in Zambia the general election, we will celebrate the centenary of Fidel Castro Ruz, a master of humanism whose political ethic seems written for this very moment. These are not prophecies of any kind, but rather the fruit of a rational analysis by a mind that understood and could extract the essence of conflicts and interests. For decades, Fidel Castro warned about the West's obsession with attacking Iran. In his 2010 reflections, significantly titled "On the Brink of a Tragedy," he stated with rational clarity that the indomitable resistance of a nation of more than 70 million inhabitants will not accept insolence. Fidel did not make prophecies. He conducted scientific analysis of power. The consequence of US imperial interference could be catastrophic and would affect all the inhabitants of the planet far more than of all the economic crises combined. The only thing that has changed over time is that wars and political tensions have increased, accompanied by the growing irresponsibility of global authorities who today completely lack any vision for the future. If the war against Iran isn't a plan by some to destabilize the global financial system to undermine the power of the old elites, or a trap set for Trump by his adversaries, it's hard to imagine that the millions of dollars spent by the US and Israeli intelligence service on all sorts of consulting before the attack on Iran didn't help them to understand that their war plan was going to fail. They did not even bother to read Fidel Castro. They never understood the world they hate. Apparently, the only thing still holding back Israel's whole dreams of a nuclear bombing of Iran is the physical proximity of the inevitable radioactive clouds and ash. Compared to the bloody madness of what they are doing, this seems almost like an act of sanity, although it's uncertain how long it will last. Fidel understood before anyone else that underestimating the Iranian forces with their millions of trained men and their land and naval combat capabilities would lead the United States into a dead end. He even predicted the nature of this war, the use of drones, and the vulnerability of missile launches to surface ships. He warned that an attack on Iran reactors would not be surgical operation, as Donald Trump stated, but the inevitable trigger of a global nuclear war. For him, the critical point for the survival of the Homo sapiens was precisely there, in the Strait of Hormuz. His words resonate today like a pronouncement. Tomorrow will be too late. To delve into the case of Cuba in this context is to speak of an aggression accumulated of over 70 years. While the war looks to the Middle East, Washington continues to take advantage of the chaos to try to deliver the final blow to the Cuban Revolution. The executive order of January 29, which declares Cuba an unusual and extraordinary threat, it is in reality a strangulation order. By punishing any country or shipping company that transport fuel to our island, the United States thinks to paralyze the basic functioning of our society. This ruthless policy resulted in not a single fuel shipment arriving to our port for 3 months, a situation only alleviated 2 days ago with the arrival of a Russian tanker carrying 730,000 barrels. It is cynical that the 61% of the American citizens oppose an attack on Cuba while this administration persists in a doctrine of peace through strength that is merely a euphemism for domination. Trump brazen speaks of taking over Cuba, dreaming of golden letters on hotels along the Malecon, ignoring that the dignity of a people cannot be sold to capital. The aggression we are experiencing today stems from the inability of the US elite to recognize Cuba's right to full independence and self-determination. This largely explains the ruthlessly aggressive policy currently being pursued against the Cuban people. Despite this suffocating scenario, Cuba has not yielded and never will. We have managed to mitigate the impact of this energy blockade thanks to the unity of the people, under the leadership of Raúl Castro and President Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez. Cuban resilience is not a matter of chance, but the result of decades of investment in education, biotechnology, and social infrastructure. There are attempts to erase from memory that Cuba achieved health indicators superior to those of wealthy nations, that it sent doctors around the world, and that it was decisive in the defeat of apartheid in Africa. Today, although we have not been able to build the revolution we longed for due to external pressures and our own limitations, we continue to defend an alternative to the neoliberal order. Cuba has the sovereign right to free trade. Our development should not depend on charity, but on an economy integrated in the world with justice. We reject betrayal and submission. As Fidel warned, every government has the obligation to respect the right to life of nations. Faced with the imminent risk of nuclear war and the global energy crisis, indifference is a crime. On behalf of the Cuban government and people, we thank those who extend their hands in solidarity. Cuba will remain steadfast, consistent, and loyal to its principles because we know that justice and reason in the end are the only forces capable of saving humanity. Thank you very much.